Now, my advice for writers and poets who want to become published will depend, of course, on where they are with their writing at the point of the conversation. So if you are just starting, you have a few pieces here, a few pieces there, maybe you studied a novel, you have a first draft or a few chapters, you don't have any formal training, you're just passionate about writing and you have written a few pieces, try to get published in small venues first. There is this resource that poet Alison Joseph created, a poet I forgot to mention among the ones that I really love because of the way she talks about her own childhood. It was very inspirational to me when I was writing my memoir. Alison Joseph created a very valuable resource for emerging and seasoned writers. So it's called the Creative Writing Opportunity List. And I always tell people, start sending work out and see the kind of feedback you get so that you can see how better to break into the publishing world. Let me try to get a little bit more organized in my advice. So once you've written, make sure that someone reviews your work. And I don't necessarily mean your sister or your best friend or your girlfriend, boyfriend. Ask someone who's going to be very honest with your writing to read it, someone with writing experience. So that's the first step. Get some feedback to know where you are, where you stand as a writer, what you need to improve, what is working. Because the people who love you will give you valuable feedback as readers, but they will not necessarily know how to improve your writing and what needs to be sharpened in terms of skills. So joining a writers group is terrific because you get to meet people with different backgrounds in writing. Some of them are just studying just like you. Some others have been writing for a while. They've gotten some experience in terms of what works and what doesn't in writing. So that feedback is going to be very important. The second step is to try to think as early as you can, think about what you stand for as a writer. And it's important because if you are inspired, you might get a little scattered in your writing. When I think about the kind of writing I did early in my careers, so I jumped from one project to the next and I was all over the place. And all those projects were in and of themselves valuable and exciting and interesting, but you cannot write everything. You have to pick and choose what you want to focus on and really make it work as a piece of art. So if you're going to dedicate yourself to a novel, I would suggest, okay, just focus on the novel, and if you have other projects who are really begging for your attention, take some notes, keep a journal of future projects, but try to focus on one project from beginning to end before you go into another one. And I know that other writers might give different advice, but I have noticed that with many of the writing clients that I have, since I work as a coach, that the ones that are very inspired tend to be a little scattered. And a lot of my work has to do with refocusing their work and making sure that they come up with some kind of working plan. When it comes to now getting published, I mentioned earlier the Creative Writing Opportunity List put together by Alison Joseph. she provides you a list of all literary magazines and publishing houses that are looking for stories or poems, whether it's for a specific issue or for an anthology. So start there, because once you've completed a book, whether it's a novel or a collection of poems, editors want to see that you're very passionate about what you're writing. So I do a lot of acquisitions work for a publishing house in Coral Gables. And I wish that authors knew a little bit more about what editors are looking at. So when you send a book, sometimes the book is great. I mean, it's awesome. The topic is on point, the book is interesting, but part of the editorial meeting is listening to marketing, to the marketing department share their piece and whether they'll be able to sell a specific book. And a lot has to do with kind of creating a place for yourself in the literary world. Let's say that you wrote a fantastic book, but you don't have a platform. Well, it's going to be very difficult for a publisher to sell the book. You usually want a partnership between the author and the publisher. And by platform, I don't mean having thousands and thousands of followers on social media. I mean that your community recognizes you as an expert in a specific field or as an expert in a specific kind of writing, so that they will want to buy the book. Let's say, for instance, that you decide that you're going to write a book about growing plants in South Florida. The publisher is going to want to look at what you've done to forge your place in the community. Do you have a blog where you talk about growing plants? Have you been to events that are related to the love for botany, and have you talked about the topic? Basically, do you have such passion for the topic that you're also going to show passion for the book once the book comes out? So my advice to emerging writers is, once you figured out what you stand for as a writer, start building your platform. Don't wait until the book is ready to start building the platform. Establish connections. Talk about who you are, why this is important to you. So when you actually have a book ready, you find a publisher more easily.